A very good afternoon to all those who have joined this session. Let us begin it. We are going to start with the seventh unit after completing the fourth unit topics, which was composed of some of the topics from fifth and sixth unit. So we are quickly getting into seventh now. Let us try to have a look on to the contents that are there in the seventh unit. So the first thing that we will be learning is what is streams in Java. As we learned in the C++ also, there was a concept called as streams. Here also we will be looking into what is a stream. With regard to the input and output operations, then we will have a look on what are the predefined classes that are available in Java, which supports the streams. Now, after that, we will be looking into the applets concept. And in applets, we will be specifically focusing on what is the life cycle of an applet, when will be the applet created, and when will the applet be destroyed, and what are the functions that are needed, or what are the methods that are needed for the applet to run its life cycle. So we'll see all those methods one after the other in the third point. Then in the fourth point, we'll try to concentrate on what are the applet classes and what is the architecture of applet, how it works around. What different components do the applet require for its functioning. Then we'll try to see how to have applet selections to be done, which applet to be executed and when. Then we'll try to have a look on the applet initialization and termination, how to initialize and terminate the applets. Then next to it, we'll try to see creation of applets with regard to some of the programs. I have kept a lot of programs with regard to applets just to show you a graphical user nature of our Java programming, but it is not necessary right now at this age of life because they are in depth, they are very in detail, and since applets has been made absolute from Java 1.4 onwards, that means Java 1.4 onwards, the JDK doesn't support applet configurations. It's meant only and only for just a practice purpose. Will not be focusing much in our life for applets. There are various other things that we need to focus on. So we will be quickly shifting on to that particular concept. So basically starting with our streams. Stream is nothing but in English a flow of something from one end to another end. For example, water stream, a river that flows from one end to another, a piece of river or a branch of river that flows from one end to another. We call it as a stream in English. Similarly, if the data is flowing from one source location to another destination location, then that particular flow of data is called as input-output stream. Suppose the data is flowing from some source file to our program, then it is called as input stream. And from our program, if the data is flowing towards some output device, then that particular data is called as output stream. So in the basic manner, we can understand it like we have got keyboard or mouse, and we are giving some input from that devices, and that input is being read into our Java program through scanner class or some class effect, and that particular data that is flowing from our keyboard to our Java program is input stream. Basically, that operation is called as read operation. And whenever we compute some value and when we want to put the value back onto the monitor for the user to see it, then that particular data which is flowing from our Java program to the monitor, which is our destination device, is called as output stream. And the operation is called as write operation. Now looking back into the source and destination further, this source may be the console, that may be the keyboard or the mouse, or it may be another file from which we are reading the data, or it may be some data which is coming over internet through some socket. Okay, so this source may be any one of it. It may be a file, input file, it may be a console device, or it may be a socket on which some internet data is coming. Similarly, on destination, It may be a file onto which we want to write the data, we want to save the data. It may be the console, that means our monitor or some printer, something like that, on which we want to send the data. It may be a socket, that means we may send the data over the internet through some socket of our device. So this whole scenario, sending and receiving of data from one end to another end, is called as stream in Java. So in simple terms, stream represents an input source or a output source destination. A stream can represent many different kinds of source and destinations, including disk files, devices, and other programs or memory arrays. So I have kept all the data which is required for you to write an exam, but in simplest term, we can say a stream is a sequence of data. This is very important point. In many of the competitive exams have concentrated on this particular statement. What is a stream? Is a sequence of data, yes or no? It's a sequence of data. Okay. So if the data is flowing from some input device or from one file to our Java program, then that particular stream of data is called as input stream. Whereas if the data is flowing from our program to some output device or to some output file, then that particular stream is called as output stream. So in case of Java, Java supports streams with the help of java.io package. Just like we had java.io package for scanner class, here we have got java.io package. So can anyone remind me back how many packages we have learned? How many packages we have come across till now? Two. What are they? Did not remember it, right? So the first one, first and foremost, is import keyword required. I'm just concentrating on package name. Import is a keyword required for importing that package into our program. Okay, java.lang and java.util. Have you also gone through something like this? Do you recollect it? In the third unit, we have gone through this particular package, which was containing the applet class, which was required for our applets to be functioning. Actually, the applets part was to be introduced in the 7th unit, but I did it in the 3rd just to make sure that you are becoming familiar there. Okay, anyway, so java.io is another package, and there are lots of classes inside it, and we'll be trying to learn what are those classes one after the other. So java.io is the input output package which supports this streams concept to us. Fine. So we have got various things to be learned. If we want to write the data onto what destination and sources can we write the data, we can write the data or read the data from files. We can read the data from pipes. We can read the data from network connections. We can have in-memory buffers, that is arrays, or we can have system.in, system.out, or system.error. System.in represents the keyboard, system.out represents the motherboard, system.error is a specialized memory location that contains all the error information which occurs during the program execution. So IO streams are core concepts. Definitely they are core concepts. Whenever we are performing any read operation, the IO stream concept is coming into picture, and whenever we are trying to write the data onto or something like that, the write operation is going to come into picture. That means output stream is going to work. So basically, streams can be classified into two categories. One is byte oriented streams, second is character oriented streams. So byte based streams are going to read and write the data in terms of binary information, ones and zeros, and 8 bits will become byte. Okay, but in case of character oriented writing and reading, the characters or alphabets plus numerical and special symbols all together will be written onto files. So in terms of byte, the data that will be stored inside file will be ones and zeros because it's binary. And in terms of characters, it will be character oriented data, which will be like a English language data for us. So basically input operations are classified based on two categories. One is byte based, second is character based. To support byte based operations, the Java programmers have defined certain classes, and to support character oriented operations, Java programmers have defined certain classes. Okay, just give me 1 minute, I'll be back. So let us try to see what is the actual purpose of using input-output streams. First and foremost purpose is we will not just read the data from the keyboard from the users. We may read the data from some file. For example, PDF to image converter is a PDF is a character-oriented data, and image is a byte-oriented data. Okay, image, those pixel colorings will be saved in terms of binary values. So when I want to convert from one format to another format, or from one file to another file, it may be character to character also, it may be image to image or something like that. Whenever you are trying to access the files, you need to make use of certain classes which are defined in IOStream package. So first purpose for learning IO package or IOStream is for file access. Second is whenever I want to have some data to be sent over internet and download it from internet, then we need to have that network access. And to have network access, we need to learn the IO package, without which it will not work. Similarly, sometimes you will not send the data over the internet, or you will not save it permanently onto your hard disk. You will just save it into your RAM memory so that the data can be utilized by other softwares. That internal memory buffer access should be available. To have that buffer access, we will be learning this particular IO package. Internal thread communication. We'll have one microprocessor inside our computer, right? That microprocessor, though it may be an Intel chip or something like that, can execute only one program at a given moment of time. But a program can be built up of multiple functions. So shall we allow only one function to get executed at a given moment of time? Suppose some function is trying to read the data from the hard disk. The time taken to read the data from hard disk and the computation time of processor are having a huge gap. Processor is very fast, whereas from the hard disk to get the data is very time consuming. It may be seconds, but microprocessor is going to compute within fractions of seconds, microseconds. So micro and 1 or 2 seconds is a big gap. To patch that gap, what we'll do is, while the processor is waiting for the data for one part of our program, another part of the program can run simultaneously by the processor. So we will treat those two parts of programs as two separate threads. This concept of splitting our program and running them parallelly was introduced by Java, called as thread concept. Okay, just like the name itself was given just because of the concept called as a cloth. Cloth will be built up of multiple threads which will be running parallelly. Okay, so if you have inter-thread communication to be done using pipes, then also you need to have input-output operations to be learned. Similarly, if you want just for temporary purpose, you want to save the data just like memory buffer access, you want some temporary memory to be allocated for the data to be sent from one file to another, then you will use buffering. Then filtering, you have a lot of amount of data and you want to filter it out based on your requirement, then you will be learning the filtering concepts from IO package only. Then parsing, you have the data in one format, you want to convert it into another format. That process called as parsing will be done by using IO package. Reading and writing text or something onto our files, or some piece of information onto desktops, something like that, can be done only through IO package. We cannot just read and write the text, we can even read and write the primitive data types like storing some integer values, storing some byte values, storing some character values, something like that. Not just in that, not just text, not just primitive data types, even the objects can be written into the memory. Okay. So what are the classes that support for input-output operations in Java? There are various classes that are available, and few of them I have listed here. Do remember I am mentioning few of them. And you need to remember that these particular classes have been classified into whether those are pertaining to input operations or output operations. If they are pertaining to input operations, they are called as input streams. And if they are pertaining to output operations, they are called as output stream classes. Okay. So these are basically abstract classes, abstract superclasses, so that the others deriving classes will implement their functionality as per their requirement. If if the deriving class is of byte orientation, it will provide the definition of this class methods based on byte orientation. If the deriving class is character oriented, then it will define the functionalities of this input stream based on character oriented nature. So what is to be done will be defined in the derived classes. So we have got various classes that are available, but 3 of them are automatically created for us. We need not go for any further creations for them. Okay, these 3 classes are the default ones which are automatically attached to the console and for error. For example, system.out represents our console output devices, system.in represents our console input devices, and system.error represents that piece of memory which holds the error messages, the line number in which the error occurred, and the solution for that particular error. क्या है माँ? ओके ठीक है. प्रिंसिपल साहब को बोल दिया ना? ठीक है. So you all know how to use the system.out, right? Just for example, I kept system.error also. It is very similar. We need not worry about much detail over here for error, because we will be learning about try catch block, and in that one we will be writing the error messages back to the screen by using print stack trace, which is another part which we will be learning later. So we have got, for reading operation to be performed, in the earlier classes we used the scanner class, right? And we created an object of scanner class, and we used scanner object dot next int to read the integer value. But suppose if I wanted to read some data from system.in, because system.in represents the input console, right? So if I want to read the data from system.in, then I have to make use of a method called as read. This method will return ASCII code of the first character which has been read. If you enter 10-15 characters also, for example, your name you have entered, it will read only the first character, and that too, it will not read it with character oriented, it will read it in terms of ASCII value of that character. For example, Asmatullah Khan, in that it will read only A, and that too, it will not read it as A, it will read it as 65. So we need to be aware of what it is going to be reading the data. That's why the data type of I is integer. Similarly, if I want to put it back on the screen, back into the character oriented, what you need to do is you need to just typecast it into character orientation. We have I as 65 because we have kept as A over there. And when I wanted to put it back onto the screen, I need to typecast it. If I don't typecast it, it will just print 65 on the screen. Okay, so there are various classes that are available in case of Java IO, but basically these two are categorized based on what type of nature they are. If they are byte based or character based, again these two are categorized into whether they are input based or output based. So what is the type of data which they will be working around has been kept in the red lines, and their classifications have been given with the class names. What I have written in the cells is the class name. Do remember this thing. What I have written in the cells is a class name. So for example, considering the byte-based data, byte-based in the sense ones and zeros binary data written in terms of 88 bits as 1 byte, when it comes for input operations, we have got a class called as input stream. This is for basic operations to be performed, input stream. But very well. Just give in 2 minutes. So, if the data is with regard to arrays, reading the values in arrays, then we have got a specialized class called as byte array input stream. Do observe here that there is no space between the wordings, and the initial letter of each next coming word is capitalized. This is the process which, this is the convention which you have to follow for your classes to be named. Okay. So when the operations are pertaining to file manipulations, some file data to be written onto file or reading the data from file, then we have got file input stream, and I have got one more class in Java called as random access file, because files can be accessed either through random nature or sequential nature. We have or index nature. 3 ways are there for accessing of files, which we will be learning in the operating system concept in your next coming on semester. Okay, now just observe that in order to perform the file operations, we have got two classes which are provided by Java in Java IO package. One of the class is file input stream class, another class is random access file class. If the operations are to be done onto pipes for inter-thread communications, then piped input stream as a class. And if the operations are to be performed for temporary memory to hold the data for one file or from one device to another device communication, then that is buffered input stream. Buffered input stream. If you want to have some filtering operations to be performed, then the class that is provided in Java IO package is filtered input stream class. If you want to perform some parsing operations, then you have got stream tokenizer, which will let us to tokenize our stream, or push back input stream. If you are performing string operations, then no need of any specialized class for byte-based orientation, because strings are arrays of characters. Okay. If the data is byte-based data to be manipulated, then we have got data input stream. If we have got data formatted, while reading, format is not important. It will be read in terms of characters only, in terms of ASCII values. While writing, it will have some formatting to be done. We will see what is that formatting. If the data is to be read or written in terms of objects, then we have got object input stream. And if certain utility programs were already there and those programs are to be read sequentially, then we have got sequence input stream. So all these are the names of the classes pertaining to the input operations performed on different types of sources or destinations, but all of them are based on byte orientation. Similarly, we have got for output operations for byte orientation, output stream, byte array output stream, file output stream, random access file stream. We have got piped output stream, buffered output stream, filtered output stream, data output stream, print stream, and object output. For character, we will have for input reader as a class name, Input stream reader is another class name. Character array reader is another class name. File reader is another class name. Piped reader is another one. Buffered reader is another one. Filter reader is another one. Pushback reader, line number reader, string reader. All these are with regard to input. When it comes for output, here we call it as writer, output stream writer, character array, file writer, piped writer. So all these are one after the other, those classes which are responsible for reading and writing the data with regard to character orientation. We have used system.out, right? And I said that out is a object, and that object is of print writer class, and that object is of which class? Print writer class. So you can think that whatever operations we are performing through println, those are character based operations, and that's why you are able to see on the screen characters that we have entered back onto the monitor. So I kept this particular slide in front of you, this chart, which is containing a lot of class names. But I know that as a student, it is very difficult for you to remember and by heart how to write these classes. And there is a big problem that the times they will ask you, mention any 6 stream classes in Java. What are streams in Java? Mention any class names in Java. So how do you remember it? Easiest thing, if it is byte based, you will have a word called as stream coming up. If it is byte based, it will have a word called as stream at the end of the class names. If it is character based, it will have a word called as reader at the end of the class names. Okay, do observe, for input operations we have got input stream. For array operations we have got byte array input stream. For output also byte array output stream. So this stream will directly identify that all the classes are based on byte orientation. If you have got reader or writer, then you have to analyze it. Okay, reader can be a human being, writer can be a human being. So those two are based on characters. Human beings can read only characters, right? So you have to quickly analyze and memorize it like that. Now, how do we memorize? Okay, classification is done. Now, how do I memorize these files? This is again a problem for me. Just memorize these left-hand side operations. Different types of file, different types of sources and destinations. If it is an array, it will have something with regard to arrays in that class name. Okay, so input stream is for input operations, output stream is for output operations, but it is meant for some arrays, right? So array input stream we can remember, array output stream we can remember, but as soon as we see this stream coming up, we have to come to a conclusion that it is performing byte orientation over there. So we have to write byte array output stream. Similarly, files are there, file input stream, file output stream. Okay, a random access, a random file name, all those things just forget for time being. I'm just concentrating on how do you memorize it. Similarly, for pipes, pipe input stream, piped output stream, buffering, buffered input stream, buffered output stream, filtering, filter input stream, filter output stream. Parsing is difficult. Okay, you have to by heart like that only. Strings anyway, it will not be the data, data input stream, data output stream. Objects, object output stream, object input stream. Like that, you can memorize at least 5 to 10 classes out of this byte-based nature itself. Coming on for character, you need to remember that for characters, we read and write. Okay, so in case of characters, we will have reader and we will have writer. So if it is array, character reader, character writer. If it is file, file reader, file writer. If it is piped, piped reader, piped writer. If it is buffered, buffered reader, buffered writer. Filter, filter reader, filter writer. Strings, string reader, string writer. Okay, so these things you can remember easily. Though the table looks very big, but it is easy to remember. Only thing is you write it down once with that logic which I have told you. Hope it will work easy for you. shown you a logic from my own orientation. If you wish, adopt it. Otherwise, your own way of memorizing will be better for you. So what is byte stream? Byte streams are used to perform input and output operations of 8 bits or bytes. So there are various classes which we have seen earlier, and the most frequently ones which we have used are file input stream and file output stream. You need to memorize at least these two. Now, streams, as I said earlier, can perform two sets of operations, either for input and for output, input stream and output stream. I kept a program here for copying one file into another. Fine. So this file program is going to take one file, read its data character by character or byte by byte, and put the data onto some output file byte by byte. So how do we perform this particular operation? Let us try to see. It's very easy. First of all, we need the IO package to be imported. First condition. Second part, we need to create a class for us. So I have given some name for the class as copy file. You can keep any name. Okay. Now I'm having a main function, and throws IO exception is written over here. Usually we have not written this one. Do remember, whenever we are performing some input output operations, this beside the main, before the opening curly brace, you have to write two words, throws space IO exception. Do remember, IO exception, IOE are in capitals. Just like remember GIOE, all in capitals. Similarly here also IOE in capitals. Output exceptions, IO exceptions we call it as in short. Why do we need it is because Java tries to be safe-sided one. If any operations are being performed, input output operations, they are being performed based on the keyboard input given, or they are performed based on the monitors onto which the output is to be displayed, or the files from which the data can be read, or to the files onto which the data is to be written. In case the keyboard is not working, should our program stop execution? Should it get halted? Or should it give a proper message telling that keyboard is not working properly? Suppose if one file is missing from hard disk, the file is not existing. Should my program get halted? Should get struck up? No, it should give a proper message that file was not able to be read properly. Similarly, if the monitor is not functioning properly, should my program get struck up? No, it should give a proper message that the output device is not functioning properly. So for that reason, the messages have been written and the functionalities have been defined by someone, Java developers, in a class called as IO exception. This is the class name. And this class is of type exception class, which will get automatically called whenever any error happens in your program. Error with regard to the devices, input output operations. So when I'm telling that this main functionality is being written, the logic is being written, but there may be a chance that the main throws IO exception to the processor. Okay. So I'm telling that this main will throw IO exception by writing the keyword throws IO exception. Fine. Now, what we need to do is we need to read the data from one file and copy it back onto another file. So for that reason, I need input stream as well as output stream. Now I'm performing file operations, so I will use file input stream as well as file output stream. So I'm creating two objects here, one for the file input stream called as in and one for the output stream called as out. And initially I'm not assigning it to any files, we are just putting null values inside it so that they can be used further in the remaining code. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to open this input.txt. In my folder there is already one created file called as input.txt which I want to open. So I'll specify that input.txt in the constructor of file input stream, and I'm trying to allocate memory to it and put it back or refer it back with the object that we have declared here. Okay. Similarly, for out, I'm trying to create one association or linkage to it, reference to it, to a new memory location pointing to output.txt. This file is already existing in my folder. Suppose, okay. So if these two files are existing in the folder, my program will work fine. Otherwise, if the files are not existing, it will throw an error or exception back to the caller, back to the compiler, telling that these files are not present, any one of the file, if it fails to do it. Okay, now I have to perform which type of operation? This is string, so it is byte based. So I have to read one byte and put it back onto the another file, right? So now I'm taking one C as a integer type so that 2 bytes of data can be saved inside it. Using a while loop, I'm trying to read the data from the input object. Input object is pointing to what file? Input.txt. I'm calling a predefined function called as read, where it will read the first character of that particular file, put it into C. But do remember, this reading it is in terms of bytes. So C is going to contain first byte of data inside it. Okay. And if this read operation fails, that means the value has not been assigned in C, then if that is not equal to -1, if it is not equal to -1, if it fails, then if this operation becomes failed, read operation becomes fails, it will return -1. If it succeeds, it will return 1. What does this read will do? If it fails, it will return -1. If it succeeds, it will return 1. So I'm checking, is it not equal to -1? Has it not failed? If it has not failed, make use of out object, which is pointing to output.txt, and write the byte which is stored inside C. So this is a while loop. It will continuously read one character after the other till the end of the file has been reached. That moving to next character is automatically done by read and write operations, and the data will from one file to another file will be copied. Okay. So this entire part, I am telling the compiler that try it. If any error happens, throw a IO exception. And finally, after performing all these things, finally what to do is, if input file was not closed, close it. If output file was not closed, close it. And this is the closing of my this is the closing of finally, and this is the closing of my public static void main. This is the closing of my program itself. So I hope the program is clearly understood by all. If you have any doubt, please raise it. There is still 1 or 2 minutes remaining for this session. We will have the next session very soon. Please quickly join back. I'm going to send the link now itself. Please quickly join back. Do you have any doubt in this particular program? Because based on this program, only further programs can be understood. Otherwise, they will not be able to be understood.
Sir, the IO exception, sir.
IO exception is a class name which will contain those type of methods which will help us to tell the compiler at which line what type of error has happened for input-output operations. Using those predefined functions, we can come to know that, okay, this device failed. Our Java program is separate, right? Our keyboard is separate. In order to tell that keyboard did not work properly, I cannot try to program altogether from my side. So programmers have already written the code and we can just reuse it. Program once again, sir, can we go through it as a recap once again?